This episode is brought to you by Redfin. You're listening to a podcast, which means you're probably multitasking. Maybe even scrolling home listings on Redfin, saving homes without expecting to get them. But Redfin isn't just built for endless browsing. It's built to help you find and own a home. With agents who close twice as many deals, when you find the one, you've got a real shot at getting it. Get started at redfin.com. Own the dream.
Ever feel like your brain just won't click? Onnit Alpha Brain is a daily supplement engineered to support memory, focus, and mental speed. Made with science-backed ingredients, Onnit Alpha Brain helps you lock in, tune out distractions, and stay sharp. See what your brain can really do. Visit onnit.com and shop Alpha Brain to unlock your next level. That's ONNIT.com.
Welcome back to Marvelous Disney, the podcast where Dan Graney and I talk about Marvel, Disney, theme parks, movies, and how it all fits together, whether the company admits it or not. I'm entertainment writer Jim Hill, and I'm joined, as always, by the dazzling Dan Graney. And I have to say, again, we recorded the last show together in the same place, and it's a very handsome man up close. I'm just saying. Very nice to, after all this time doing this remotely, to be, well, now mind you, it was still the lobby of the hotel like 9:30 at night, but it was nice to hang out.
It was.
Okay, so again, as we mentioned, we are recording this on Sunday, March 29th, which means we are officially into spring. Baseball season is starting up, and somehow we're already staring down a summer movie slate that feels unusually important for Disney, don't you think?
Oh, yeah. I mean, probably not really just important, but defining.
Okay. Well, Dan, before we dive in and look at what defining for Disney means, how has your weekend gone? You were juggling Marvel prep family stuff, all of the above?
Oh, all of the above, Jim. I mean, it's one of those weekends where you're trying to line everything up just right, and then technology just kind of goes on strike. So small tweaks turn into major projects, and everything is a moving target. And it's just one thing after another. All of it seems important, yet none of it's important. And then Marvel decides to drop just enough news to kind of, make you rethink everything you thought you were going to talk about.
Yes, which these days honestly feels very on brand for Marvel. But because this week in particular, it feels like, well, we're starting to see a bigger picture form, and not just individual projects, but how Disney and Marvel are actually positioning themselves going forward here.
Oh, yeah. And it's funny because I think that's kind of the key to this week, because this isn't really about one show or one movie, but it's kind of how all these pieces are being arranged and what that kind of tells us about the puzzle that they're really piecing together.
Got it. But before Dan and I start sussing out here what are the corners and what are the little blue parts and whether that's sky, we need to talk about our sponsor, which is unlockmagic.com, where you can get real discounts on Walt Disney World and Universal Orlando tickets, sometimes upwards of 12% off. And just so you know, Unlock Magic is run by the exact same team behind the DVC rental store and the DVC resale market. So just pick your dates, grab your tickets, and go. Unlock Magic makes it easy to rack up some pretty significant savings. Oh, and when you get your tickets, tell the nice folks at unlockmagic.com that it was Dan and it was Jim who sent you. So, all right. Dan, let's start with the news of the week. So starting at the top, we have been talking a lot about Avengers Doomsday lately, and not just the movie, but the environment around it, because this isn't a quiet runway anymore. You've got some real competition building, especially with Dune 3, Part 3 sitting right there, and we just got the new teaser last week. Did you catch it?
Oh yeah, I did, and it feels big, not just visually, which obviously I think we can all expect at this point, but almost in terms of confidence. Like they know exactly what this movie is at this point, and they're leaning all the way into it. It doesn't feel like something that's going to quietly coexist with another blockbuster either. I mean, watching that trailer or that teaser, it felt like it was staking out some territory.
So, all right, we're not talking counter-programming anymore. This is a land grab, which then makes this release date a whole lot more interesting than it looked just a few months ago, because now it's not just about Marvel showing up. It's about how everything around it is positioning as well, right?
Oh, yeah, exactly. I mean, if we look at the bigger picture, which we're going to talk about, it does start to feel less like a single weekend battle. And this is more like a stretch of time where multiple studios are trying to control the conversation.
And so in this case, it's not who opens bigger, it's who then holds attention, right?
Right. Yeah. See, and I think that's where Marvel has historically been very good. They're not just dropping a movie, but they're building the momentum around it.
Okay, well, now let's hold on to that idea for a sec. Momentum, positioning, all that, because when we come back, I want to zoom in on how Marvel is applying that same thinking to its shows and the characters it's choosing to focus on. But before we do that, there's this.
Protein is now at Starbucks, and it's never tasted so good. You can add protein cold foam to your favorite drink or try one of our new protein lattes or matcha. Try it today at Starbucks.
The world moves fast. Your workday, even faster. Pitching products, drafting reports, analyzing data. Microsoft 365 Copilot is your AI assistant for work. Built into Word, Excel, PowerPoint, and other Microsoft 365 apps you use. Helping you quickly write, analyze, create, and summarize. So you can cut through clutter and clear a path to your best work. Learn more at Microsoft.com/M365 Copilot.
And we're back. Okay, so a moment ago we were talking about Marvel on the big screen, but we're going to pivot now to Marvel on the small screen for a sec, because there's a lot happening, and not all of it pointing in the same direction. I mean, for example, I don't need to let listeners of this show know, but season 2 of Daredevil Born Again just started up this past week on March 24th. Is that correct?
That is right.
And we learned of a Punisher special coming later this spring. And at the same time, we're hearing mixed things about how some of these shows are performing, right?
Yeah, and that's where this gets really interesting, because if you look at the decisions they're making, they're not purely based on performance. I think they're based on direction.
Okay, give me an example.
Okay. All right, take Daredevil. So Daredevil, we know that show was reworked mid-production. We've talked about that. And we know they changed leadership. And now season 2's already moving forward, even with some timeline weirdness about where it sits in the MCU.
Yeah, we'll get to that in a sec. But and then right alongside that, we were just talking about the Punisher special that's coming up. And that's Tuesday, May 12th. But it seems very much part of that same street corner, right?
Oh, yeah, exactly. So it just seems like that part of the universe, they're investing in it.
But then you have other pieces like Wonder Man. And Dan, I swear to God, I would have put down money that, that there wasn't going to be a season 2 of Wonder Man. And let's be honest, I even on the show said I wanted a season 2 because I want Josh Gad to come back from wherever he is. But here, we had heard, didn't do the numbers, didn't exactly set the world on fire viewership-wise, but yet, here, March 23rd, the day before Daredevil season 2 of Born Again debuts, and we learn we're getting a second season.
Yeah. And I think that there's something here that it tells us something about stuff that happened in that. I think there's a very much a watch this space aspect to that show. And I think that's the pivot. Because if this were strictly numbers driven, that just doesn't happen. So the question becomes, what are they actually measuring now? Because it doesn't seem like this is just about viewership anymore. And this is where I think it gets interesting.
Okay, but at the same time, again, we're getting reports related to what's going on Doomsday, Secret Wars, and it's just a little concerning because it's beginning to sound like Marvel may not have future plans. Is that a polite way to put it for characters like Hank Pym and Janet Van Dyne?
Yes, and right now it's a rumor, and whether it's confirmed or not, it does kind of fit the pattern. Now, okay, granted, Quantumania, it had a lot of mud slung at it. Not to mention Evangeline Lilly announcing that she was stepping away from acting last year after she had some health issues. So, that you could kind of read the tea leaves there a little bit, but I still feel that there is some love for Ant-Man, or at least Paul Rudd as Ant-Man. I mean, yes, granted, some characters have had their moment, but, we might be seeing a time now where the focus is shifting elsewhere.
Well, now, speaking of which, and again, remember, we're just getting started with season 2 of Daredevil Born Again, but we've also had Charlie Cox firmly saying that Daredevil is not in Doomsday.
Yeah, he was. He was very, very, very adamant that he was not in Doomsday. But that might also be the most revealing part because, for a long time, the assumption was if you're in the MCU, you eventually show up in an Avengers movie. Now, that may not be the case, supposedly.
Yeah, right. Okay, because at the same time, there are theories floating around that Daredevil might actually be in the new Spider-Man trailer, just digitally removed. Now, speaking of which, gotta ask, what did we think of the trailer for Spider-Man Brand New Day?
Oh, wow. I mean, so many thoughts. We got, quick flashes of the Rogues Gallery, which almost felt like we're probably seeing a montage of everything Peter's been doing since No Way Home. We see that on one hand, the friendly neighborhood Spider-Man is on watch, but we also see him checking in on Ned and MJ, and then we're reminded that he's also kind of the friendless neighborhood Spider-Man since that memory spell that Doctor Strange cast. But then we got, all of a sudden, there's Dr. Banner, who seems to be, for me, almost seems like he's standing in for Kurt Connors, who is the Lizard from the Toby, from the comic books, but also, Kurt Connors, who is a doctor/mentor at school. But then next thing you know, here he is again. There's Frank Castle, the Punisher, and he and Spidey clearly have crossed paths before, based on just a little bit of dialogue we saw there. But as far as what the trailer may not be showing, yeah, Marvel's done this before.
Now, speaking of which, timeline-wise, this movie is jumping forward as well. That's correct, right?
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's several years past No Way Home. 4 years, in fact, which I mean, it makes sense just from a timing standpoint, but I was like, wow, that's a pretty sizable jump. So, I mean, we see Spider-Man actually being one of the furthest ahead characters in the MCU right now, which kind of gives him a unique position heading into whatever comes next.
Now, also, Daredevil-wise, and again, look, he's not in Doomsday, supposedly. He's not in Spider-Man, supposedly. But yet he's leading his own series, which, again, had its season 2 premiere just a few days ago. We got 8 episodes of that. And, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. The timing of all of that kind of is what really stood out to me, because we're also now learning that season 2 is positioned pretty far down the timeline, further ahead than a lot of what we've been watching recently. And that means that Daredevil is operating in a version of New York that's already been through a lot.
Yes, and important to stress here, including the events that we saw in Thunderbolts, and even some of the ripple effects coming out of Fantastic Four, right?
Oh, exactly. So instead of this constantly syncing everything up, it does kind of feel, I don't know, that Marvel's starting to let these stories exist at slightly different points, which actually would make it easier to tell a grounded story, because they don't have to explain why the Avengers aren't showing up every 5 minutes.
There we go. And speaking of grounded, let's talk Frank Castle for a sec, because again, we now have a title and an actual release date for The Punisher special.
That's right. The Punisher, One Last Kill. What's interesting here is where this thing's going to land, because it drops right after Daredevil and right before Spider-Man.
In fact, just to sort of lay out those dates for you folks, that's Tuesday, May 12th, and then we don't get Brand New Day till July 31st. So, it reminds me of those highway signs. Last rest stop for, 25 miles, just sort of like your last bit of Marvel before Spider-Man. But
that's right.
Anyway,
that's right.
You were saying.
Oh, well, I mean, so we're seeing a very clear street level run. It goes from Daredevil to Punisher to Spider-Man. That's not an accident.
No, and more to the point, from everything we're hearing, this is not going to be a watered-down version of the Punisher character either, right?
Oh, no. I mean, if anything, it sounds like they're leaning into what worked before. A darker tone, more grounded, which again reinforces that this corner of Marvel is being treated differently than the big crossover side. I have to say, I think at this point, the pearl clutchers who were worried about how Disney might water down the Netflix shows, I think they can go ahead and relax.
Yeah, well, from what I saw from the first episode of season 2, most definitely that first episode was brutal. All right. So let's zoom out for a sec, and because there's another piece of the puzzle here that doesn't get talked about as much, and that's Department of Damage Control. Because you found an article that talked about how there was this planned series centered around damage control.
Yeah, and this is where this gets really interesting, because I didn't even know this, but at the time it just felt like another project that didn't make it to the finish line. There's been many, we all know. We see all the logos at Comic-Con and now D23, but Damage Control has quietly been showing constantly since, and there's a lot of rumors that they're going to be tied into how Marvel introduces mutants in the main timeline. And considering what we haven't seen, such as who Tremel Tillman, who's so fantastic in Severance on Apple TV, who is he playing in Brand New Day? Because they're being a little coy about that. So even though this Damage Control series was canceled, the concept clearly didn't go away. It just feels like it got repositioned, and I think that's the pattern we're seeing now.
Okay, so which kind of fits what we've been talking about overall with this week's show, that things aren't necessarily being thrown out, they're being repurposed, redirected.
Yeah, and I think this also helps explain why something like Wonder Man is coming back for a second season, because it still fits into whatever larger plan they're building.
Okay, so I guess it's less about individual wins and losses and more about whether something fits the long-term picture. So, okay, we'll talk more about this in a sec, but first, this.
This episode is brought to you by Fandango. People say fans are too distracted these days, but the truth is, when a great movie hits the screen, you show up, you stay glued, invested, part of the story. And without fans like you, there'd be no cinema magic, no shared moments, So head to Fandango.com to get tickets, stream, or rent or buy top movies and series. Fandango loves fans.
This episode is brought to you by Ferrero. Soccer's biggest stage is approaching, and Ferrero is making it easy to go all in. Pick any two Ferrero brands from Kinder Bueno to Ferrero Rocher, and you could win the $1 million grand prize, plus an exciting range of daily and weekly prizes. Don't miss your shot. Official rules apply. Learn more at goallinandwin.com.
And we're back. A couple of things before we continue on with the show here. We were just talking about the brand new day trailer for Spider-Man, which again coming out July 31st. Did you see just today? That reached 1 billion views. Which, by the way, to put that in context, folks, the Harry Potter trailer, which also debuted this week, HBO is crowing about the fact that, wow, that's the most viewed thing in the history of HBO. And we're so thrilled that's gotten 227 million views. So less than a fourth of what Spidey got. And by the way, we were also talking about how Daredevil and Spidey and the Punisher were all these street level heroes, in New York City. And I wanted to point out, did you see that John Berthnell, the gentleman who's playing Frank Castle, is actually on Broadway right now?
I did not. What is he doing?
Oh no, you're going to love this. They're doing Dog Day Afternoon as a stage show. The Pacino from 75, but it's John who's playing Al's role. So Attica, So I just thought that was so cool. But in fact, it's been being presented at the August Wilson Theater since March 10th. It actually opened. This podcast goes live on April 1st. It opened on Broadway on March 30th, and is supposedly running through June 28th. So, wow, poor guy's going to finish running, performing on Broadway, and then have to go straight into promoting, Brand New Day, doing that worldwide tour that they always do. But anyway, speaking of teasers, we had another one drop last week, and this one from our friends over at DC. Is that correct?
Oh yeah, the Lanterns teaser, or I'd like to call it True Detective Season 5.
Very good. Very good.
What's interesting here is how quickly DC's tying things together, because there's Jon Stewart, there's Hal Jordan, and talk of those characters connecting directly into the Superman stories. I mean, they're moving at a much faster pace, it seems, at DC. Now, granted, there could be because they've got a lot of stuff going on behind the scenes. Who knows?
All true, but interesting contrast here. I mean, Marvel, it seems to be carefully deciding where characters go, where DC is putting connections on the table pretty quick, don't you think?
Oh, yeah. I mean, we're seeing, Marvel kind of spacing things out methodically and DC connecting things immediately. Totally different approach. But I think we're also seeing how both studios are trying to build momentum just in their own way. Understood. And again, Dan and I are both huge James Gunn fans, so it's just sort of like, want to see what he's going to do over there. But anyway, before we wrap up this week's show, is there anything else that caught your eye out there in the superhero sphere? Yeah, this one, a quick one, but it's more of a reminder than anything else, is that there's just a huge portion of Marvel's library that hasn't even been touched in the MCU yet. And I found this article on comicbook.com by Niall Gray. And it was the 10 best Stan Lee superheroes who still haven't appeared in the MCU. And it just reinforces, I think, how much runway they still have if they want to use it. So I'm going to walk through these. We're talking about, and some of these characters, I have to tell you, there's a couple I'm like, I have no idea who that is. We're talking Dr. Druid, who's this sort of mystical hypnotist type character. Obviously feels like that's something that could fall into Doctor Strange. Mimic, who is an early X-Men, who can copy powers. Atlas, who ties into the Thunderbolts world. Karnak and Crystal, which would be from the Inhumans side of things, which, I don't know, maybe we'll come back to that somehow. I always will love the Inhumans. I love Black Bolt. I love that we got to see Anson Mount in the Black Bolt costume, even though it was only for like 2 minutes in Multiverse of Madness, but, one can hope. There's Balder the Brave. Now, this is Thor's brother, who somehow still has not shown up, so maybe. Kazar, which is basically Marvel's Tarzan in the Savage Land, comes heavily appeared in the X-Men comics. Ravage, which is more of a futuristic 2099 character. So, Marvel. Now, we sort of saw Marvel. That was the original Captain Marvel, but very different than what we saw in the first film. And then finally, Rick Jones, who's been connected to the Hulk, to the Avengers. He's this character who's been everywhere. So, I mean, this was just 10 characters, but it just shows that there's still a deep, deep bench. If Marvel, ever really want to go digging, there's so much more, and maybe they will.
Absolutely. I mean, I want to remind folks that when Disney bought Marvel in August of 2009 for $4 billion, at that time, Disney played up the fact that, with this acquisition, they got the rights to over 5,000 characters. And I mean, don't get me wrong. We are now, 40 films into the Marvel Cinematic Universe, countless limited series. So a number of folks have, stepped into the spotlight, so to speak. But, we have barely scratched the surface if they're serious about those 5,000. So, which again is kind of the opposite of they're running out of ideas. The narrative that's out there. So, so when you look at everything we talked about today, it really does feel like Marvel is settling into a clearer approach.
Yeah, I would say that. I mean, they're not chasing everything anymore. I think they're deciding what matters and just building around that.
Okay. One quick question before we close here, because there was another little bit of news that broke while we were away, and we saw Disney. And again, these are always a little frustrating because it's Disney release dates with no titles linked to them, with no characters linked to them. But what did you make of the news that broke earlier this month that, for example, we had a Marvel movie that was originally coming out February 18th, 2028. So that would have been just 6 weeks or so after Secret Wars. But that is literally the one Marvel movie for 2028, and it gets pushed back to July 28th of 2028. And then to further muddy water, in 2029, we saw Disney stick flags in 2 dates for Marvel movies in that year. We have one coming out on May 4th, 2029, and the other July 13th. Of 2029. We're planting a flag. What are you releasing there? Come back later. We'll figure that out.
They do tend to do that, and I think they actually have some plans. I don't think that they're completely just blindly throwing things at the wall. I think we know that they are aware that Shang-Chi is in desperate need of a sequel. I think that's one that I think Shang-Chi as a character is going to be fairly prominent in Doomsday and or Secret Wars. Just because of that, I think there's going to be the next Black Panther at some point. We know that's cooking. We also know that there's still hunger for another Doctor Strange and another Thor. So it's sort of like there are certain balls in the air. I don't think that this is like just sort of a catch-all of like, who knows what we can do. I think they have a handful that they're trying to figure out where they will fall. I don't think it's like wide open. So while it's a open and mysterious schedule, I think they have some idea of which ones, and it's just a matter of what comes first.
Got it. Oh, one other thing before we go here, and I bring this up because Dan and I were both out in L.A., and while we were out in L.A., they had the Academy Awards, and Sinners did rather well. In fact, Ryan Coogler, the gentleman behind, the two Black Panther movies, took home an Academy Award for, best screenplay or thereabouts. But the film was actually up for best costume. It was one of the 16 awards that they were up for. And I always loved that story about how Sinners, the outfits that are in Sinners are actually from an aborted version of Blade. We talked about that on the show, didn't we?
We did.
Yeah.
And I still hope, while Blade has not officially been canceled, I think if we're going to see Blade, I think we might see Blade as part of an ensemble, which would be the Midnight Suns. That includes Blade, potentially Ghost Rider, potentially Moon Knight, Doctor Strange, sort of like the goth kids in the school cafeteria of the Marvel Universe.
Oh, I like that. I really like that. Okay, so long story short, folks, the pieces are in place.
That's right. And now, we're starting to see how they finally come together.
All right. Well, on that note, folks, let's wrap up this week's episode of Marvelous Disney. But before we do that, Dan, where can the nice folks find you online?
If you want to go to YouTube or Facebook or Instagram and look for the Hububbery, HUBBUBBERY, we've got a whole bunch of new content brewing. Actually, Hunter and I recorded 3.5 new episodes of we went through I don't know what happened there. It was I'm gonna just blame it on the coffee, but we have a bunch of stuff coming up, and we actually do talk about you in one of them, because one thing that we're planning on doing is a great big rewatch of the MCU leading up to Doomsday. And I think we're going to reach out and say, hey, does anybody want to participate in this? I will tell you, Jim, we're not going to do an episode for every single movie and every single show because I'm like, we can't do all of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. and all of the shows and all of that, but like all of the Netflix. But I think we're going to tackle it by phase.
Wow.
So
I love the ambition of that. But at the same time, I think we talked about this on the show previously. It's just the notion of, I would love a you must watch this. I mean, for example, that moment in Stark Tower where, they're having the party up there and we watch Steve Rogers almost move Mjolnir. And you get that expression from Thor. And then, what is it, 20 films later, that pays off. And I feel like I would love to have something like that where it's the equivalent of, a cheat sheet to hand somebody who's, just coming into the Marvel Universe. Because there's got to be some. There's got to be, a few folks who haven't done this yet. And the notion of, if they're stepping into Doomsday, what they need to know for it to be special. I mean, for example, if what we're hearing is true about, or more to the point, what we just saw from the original teaser of Steve and Agent Carter and their child, and to understand, where that came from and how that was earned. Wow. No. Can't wait to see what you do with this, but no, count me in. I don't know how much time I could devote to it, but it would be lovely to revisit these films.
Yeah, exactly. What about you? Where are you at, Jim?
Well, if people want to visit other podcasts, we got Disney Dish with Len Testa. We got Fine Tuning that I do with Drew Taylor. It's our animation news. We got our Epic Universal podcast I do with Eric Hersey, the talented gentleman who produces a lot of podcasts here. Likewise, I Want That Too, Disney merch podcast where I work with Eric's lovely bride, Lauren, who, believe it or not, convinced me to do a history of Pez, and it actually turned out to be entertaining. Mm-hmm. Anyway, speaking of Eric, I want to thank Mr. Hersey and David Gray for the great job they do when it comes to editing and the production of this podcast. I also have a quick favor to ask, folks. If you could head on over to Apple Podcasts and rate and review this show and show the Hubbubbery a little love. You know, that I enjoy that show as well. Let's see. Beyond that, you can find me on X and Instagram as Jim Hill Media, and then over on Facebook as Jim Hill Media News. And I think that's going to do it for this week for Marvelous Disney. So on behalf of, again, the dazzling Dan Graney, very handsome, right up close. You really should get in the same space at some point. We will be back soon. But till then, take care.